Today, Lizzie and I are right here in front of the world famous Gold's Gym. This is the mecca of bodybuilding here in Venice Beach. And you guys see this where they have the outdoor workout area. Arnold still comes here, works out here. And you know, I wanted to come over this way because I remember a couple of years ago, I saw German in Venice over here, and this whole sidewalk, this whole area along the workout area here by Gold's Gym was totally covered with all the homeless tents and everything like that. And now, if you guys take a look at this sign, they're starting to enforce this, guys. In fact, since I've been here in Venice, I've been here for like half an hour now, I have not seen a single homeless tent here. And I'm not vouching for California or Venice and saying that they got this all figured out and it's all better now, but it looks like things are starting to move in the right direction, at least in an area like Venice here where homelessness was a huge problem. And I haven't seen anything, guys, not a single tent. And it says on the sign, starting April 20th of 2023, if you decide to set up a tent or anything like that, and you know, they catch you, they'll take the stuff out of there right away and they'll impound your things for 90 days and you'll have 90 days to claim it. If you don't, they trash it. So they're pretty much having like a zero tolerance policy now with people setting up camps and stuff here on the sidewalks. And I just wonder how long it's going to be before the rest of California starts to do that, because it seems like it's starting to work here in Venice. But obviously these people go somewhere, right? Like they don't just disappear. So who knows where all the people that were lined up on this sidewalk are lined up right now. I have no idea, but chances are they're not just gone. Now today I have a ton of different work from home and remote work stories for you, because this has been such a huge topic of contention lately. So one of the big arguments and why work from home is such a hotly debated issue is because a lot of people that do work from home argue that they're more productive working from home, whereas employers think the opposite. They think that, well, we get more done when we have people in the office, and that's why we want people back. But obviously, like we talked about in the last remote work video, there are other motivations here, like these companies losing a ton of money paying for empty office space, and the fact that if they own that office space, they're in really bad shape right now because the values of these buildings have absolutely plummeted. So there are other motivations besides just productivity here, but there was a recent study that came out about productivity and working from home. Now this study was performed on data entry workers from Chennai, India, and basically what they did is they took a period of 8 weeks and they looked at people who worked from home and worked remotely, and they looked at people who worked in the office as data entry workers. See, this is good. They're cleaning up the streets here. I'm glad that we're seeing this actually. And by the way, guys, I did reach out to German in Venice and I wasn't able to reach him. It seems like the only way you can reach the guy is through Instagram. He probably gets a ton of messages. So I reached out to him, couldn't get in touch with him. Maybe I'll get lucky and run into him around here, but I tried. But anyways, this study focused on 235 workers, and what they did is they put people into two groups, people working from the office and people working remotely. They got assigned identical tasks to do during their job. So the job was exactly the same. The only thing that was different was the location they're performing the job in. Both groups worked 35 hours a week. The ones who worked in the office had a consistent schedule from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the people who worked the 35 hours a week from home got the flexibility to choose when they wanted to work, whichever hours that might be. They also made it a point for the remote workers to take a picture from the laptops that they were given every 15 minutes to ensure that those workers were actually in fact working rather than outsourcing the work to somebody else. So that's how they pretty much kept it under control to guarantee that these people were in fact working from home during this study. What they did is they measured the typing speed for all these data entry workers to sort of measure the productivity. And they also measured the accuracy of their typing, and they looked at how much time went in between different keystrokes and things like that to pretty much gather how much productivity was being made on any given assignment. And the reason why they chose data entry is because it's a low-skill job that almost anyone can do, and it's also a job that can easily be performed from anywhere. You don't need to be in the office to do a job like this, so they figured it would be a good way to measure productivity, because that's one of the arguments that you hear a lot of people say that work remotely, like, well, there's no reason that I need to come into the office to do my job. I can easily do this job from home. There's nothing going to change if I'm in the office, right? Also, with this type of data entry job, there's no sort of collaboration. So it's not like they needed to have meetings or anything like that. It's all just individual workers being studied here. Now, what they ended up finding with this study is that the group that was working from home versus the office group, on average, was 18% less productive than the office group. And they think the reason for this is because there's no distractions, right? They're just there, they're focused, they have to work this time to this time and be done. Now, obviously, depending on the office you work in, there can be a lot of distractions, especially depending on how that office is set up and whatnot. And people like to mess around all day and, you know, hang out by the water cooler and just have a bunch of conversations, and they're not working. So that can easily be countered by that argument as well. Now, in some other studies, they also found out that communication is a big problem, because when you're trying to work remotely, it's not the same as having a meeting in the office and everybody just being there together and being able to spitball ideas, hear clearly what everybody's saying, not relying on an internet connection. You read people's body language, all sorts of things like that, that can make a difference. They even did a study over at Microsoft. Over 60,000 different staff members. They studied people who transitioned from office work in 2019 to remote work in 2020, and basically what they found with them, they also had problems with communication and forming new connections with a lot of their colleagues in terms of working together and collaborating more effectively. And they also found that people who worked remote during this time spent 25% less time collaborating with their colleagues, meaning that that's sort of like a measure of productivity for them, which might suggest that things are not going as well as people who like to promote remote work might think that's going. And you got to understand also, guys, like, this is going to be used against people who are working remotely, right? When they're starting to come out with studies like this, they're trying to basically push people back into the office any way that they can, and this is just the most recent one right here. You know, if they can come out with different studies and data points to prove that people are not as productive at home, then more and more companies might take note of this and start pushing this as their official policy. Now, it also turns out that when employees are basically asked, most employees are the happiest with some sort of hybrid schedule where they need to come into the office sometimes, but still get some freedom and flexibility to work remotely. And I think that's probably going to be the best mix for most companies moving forward, because it's not like remote work is going to go away, guys. There are always going to be companies that are going to be offering this, and there was plenty of remote work jobs before the pandemic. It's just that now that problem exacerbated the amount of remote workers out there, and some companies are having a much harder time adjusting than others. And I think it probably does matter what type of line of work or business that you're in and how many of your colleagues you need to collaborate with on the regular basis. That can really make a difference on should you be working remotely or not. Because when you're just sitting on the computer all day, like the data entry, maybe you're 18% less productive, but they could probably pay you less also by working remotely. So there's the trade-off for the less productivity. But you know, some people always ruin it for everybody else, because DJ sent me this story of this woman out of Australia that got fired from her remote work job because she got caught basically trying to game the system, right? They keep track of how much time you spend on your computer and how much time your keyboard is idle and all sorts of things like this. And that's the other thing about it. Like, okay, remote work sounds good until you start talking about things like this, if you ask me. When you start understanding that your boss in your office is watching you and paying attention to your activity and basically monitoring what you're doing, even though you're working remotely, you're still under the watchful eye of your boss. I mean, that's the reality, guys. And apparently this woman in Australia, she had a pretty important job, okay? She had a job of creating insurance documents, meeting regulatory timelines, and monitoring work from home compliance out of all things. What do you know? So the very person that's cheating the system was monitoring work from home compliance. Go figure. You see, you still have like some things going on here, but it's not like before, guys. Like all this, I remember I used to watch all of German in Venice, all of his old videos, and all this stuff was completely covered with nothing but homeless tents during the pandemic. And they started removing all of it at some point, and everybody thought it's all going to come back as soon as they took it away. So far, it hasn't happened, which is pretty impressive, I think. You know, for California, better than you would think, I guess. Now, this woman is claiming that her office had premeditated plans to get rid of her anyhow because apparently she has some sort of mental illness problem. She received a formal warning back in November 2022 about her output, and she got put onto what's called a performance improvement plan. So usually anytime something like this happens to you, then you're on notice, guys. Like, you could be, you know, one step away from being out the door if you're on some sort of performance review plan, because obviously they're not happy with what you're doing. And after monitoring her a little more closely, they found out she was supposed to work for 44 days. She started late on 47 of those days, finished early on 29 days, and performed 0 hours of work on 4 of those days. So clearly gaming the system and trying to get away with collecting a full salary while not putting in the full amount of effort. So they gave her the burden of proof. They told her, like, if you can figure out explanations for all these times that you were missing and all these times you were late or didn't show up for work at all, then maybe we'll let it go. So she said she's tried to go through her emails and messages to see if she can explain some of this missing time, and she just is not able to come up with an excuse, probably because she's lying and, you know, she was gaming the system the whole time, but was trying to find any way to basically get out of this and not get fired. But that didn't happen. But the problem with stories like this is it gives remote workers who are doing the right thing a bad name for everybody, guys. When you have people gaming the system like this, then it puts companies on high alert thinking, well, wait a minute, we need to monitor everybody to make sure these people aren't screwing us over. Because if they don't, they're losing a ton of money in wasted salary being paid out to unproductive workers that are not doing their job. I mean, what would you rather have? Would you rather be a remote worker that's constantly being monitored and, you know, be at threat of losing your job, or have to come back into the office and not have your boss breathing down your neck every 5 minutes, kind of go back to the way things were? Because both of those situations have their pros and cons, guys. I mean, staying home and working from home, that's great, but at what point are you losing all of your privacy with that? And who knows, maybe they can start monitoring your webcam just like they did in this study without your knowledge, or listening to your microphone. Who knows what they can do, right? And obviously that would all be highly illegal, but might not stop them from doing it and giving them a clue of who's doing the right thing and who's not. Now you got Amazon, who also recently sent an email to their workers that basically threatens people that are not coming back into the office. Now here's what this email from Amazon says. We previously shared that employees should work from the office 3 or more days a week. We now have 3 months under our belt with a lot more people back in the office, and you can feel the surge in energy and collaboration happening among Amazonians and across teams. We are reaching out as you are not currently meeting our expectation of joining your colleagues in the office at least 3 days a week, even though your assigned building is ready. Then it says, we expect you to start coming into the office 3 or more days a week now. If there's a specific reason prohibiting you from doing so, or you believe you received this email in error, please have a conversation with your manager as soon as possible. Clearly, these guys are getting ready to probably lay off and fire people who are not complying with their return to office orders. And apparently what happened is a bunch of people received this email mistakenly, because you literally had people who were complying with the back to the office policy getting this email. Amazon clearly formulated this and is targeting people who are not doing the right thing, and they're probably just looking for any reason they can to get rid of as many people, guys. And obviously the remote work and work from home thing is an easy way to get rid of people, because a lot of people don't want to return to the office. So they'll likely just quit rather than get fired or laid off. Now some people are saying, oh, is this email supposed to scare us? And how much are they really tracking us? Because apparently Amazon was supposed to be tracking everybody anonymously, but now it looks like they're actually tracking individual people's performance attendance records, and that's how they're deciding who's going to be getting emails like this and who's going to be being let go. So now employees are asking questions like, why were managers not given access to this data before the email was sent out? Or why was the communication sent out to employees without any clear communication on how the data was collected? So it sounds like Amazon is starting to spy on their employees more than people realize, or at least up until now. Now they definitely know that there's some nefarious things going on over there, and they're looking at you guys. They're paying attention to who's working and who's not, and they're looking to get rid of anyone and everyone who's not complying. And I think that's going to be the recurring theme for many companies going into the next year that are not satisfied with the remote work situation. Now it's been a long time since we've actually walked over here in Venice. I think it's probably been 5 years, guys. I think I was over here last time in 2018, and things seem quite different around here now. In fact, I feel like it's actually better now and a little bit safer than it was back then 5 years ago. It seemed very dodgy 5 years ago, kind of like have to watch your back sort of thing. But now it kind of feels just like a normal touristy beach town. I have to say, first impression after 5 years, things have definitely improved. Now the last thing regarding remote work, and there's quite a bit of irony here in this one, is Zoom, the company that made remote work possible, is telling people that they need to come back into the office. So without Zoom, there wouldn't even been possible to do all these remote work meetings and have collaborations and all this going on while everybody's at home. So literally Zoom made remote work a possibility to the masses anyways. You know, companies that didn't have their own proprietary software or system to do this, internal networks. And now that all that's largely over with, they're basically saying, yeah, you got to come back into the office 2 days a week if you live within a 50-mile radius of any one of our locations. Now, first of all, I don't even understand how this is even fair, guys, because if you're only requiring people that live within a 50-mile radius to come in, and the ones that moved away don't have to, that's not really fair to the people that decided to stay close to the job just in case, right? So it's like people that stayed close to the office just in case things might change are actually the ones getting punished from this right now. And apparently this new policy to returning to work for Zoom is effective immediately starting in August and September this year. And I think this also could be due to Zoom's less than desirable financial situation right now, because when the pandemic hit and so many people were working from home, Zoom as a company exploded. Their revenue exploded, and they were doing really well. During the early days of the pandemic, shares of Zoom were trading for $559 a piece as of October of 2020. And as of right now, those same shares are worth $70, guys. So Zoom has declined substantially since things have sort of returned to normal, right? And that could be another reason why they want employees back in the office, because they're paying for this office space and they're throwing money away, just like every other company that's losing money having their office space just sit vacant. So all I can say is if you are a remote worker and you are still working remote right now, then be on alert that your company may put some sort of change to that in the coming days or in the coming months, and might start reversing some of these policies or getting stricter on who has to be in the office and who doesn't. And luckily for the people at Zoom, if you move far away from the office during this time, you kind of get a pass, but not all companies are so lucky. We've covered different stories on how people are moved across the country and getting called back into the office and having to decide, are they going to quit or are they going to drop everything and sell their house at a loss now and move back to their town where their office is at. So lots of contention with this remote work stuff right now. And like I told you guys before, I am not against remote work. You know, I think it's fine. I have no thought about it one way or the other. I'm just reporting to you what these companies are doing and what's actually happening, so that way you can have yourself ready if you are working remotely and know what might be coming down the pipeline for you. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.